Okay, so I know this video took a long time to come out, but this time I have a valid excuse. I got pretty sick about a week and a half after I announced I was going to make a third part to this theory, wrote half the script once I got better, then got sick again. I'm still feeling terrible while I'm finishing this up, so if my voice sounds a little weird, that's why. So anyway, sorry for the delay, but hey, more evidence recently got released in support of this theory, so it's all good, man. Anyway, on to the video! Okay, so Sonic Mania hit the Switch and other consoles a few weeks ago, and I got it basically the moment it was available. I had made sure to only look at Sega's official teasers and trailers and avoid the leaks I saw peppered across the internet, and it certainly paid off. My first playthrough was absolutely incredible. Having only played the classic games on a passable at best Nintendo DS collection, I was absolutely blown away at how smooth Mania ran and how good it felt to play the game. I blitzed through the game in no time flat, and then moved on to the collectibles and the Chaos Emeralds, because I wanted to play as Super Sonic, dang it. And that's the point when I started to notice little things about the game, like how the hard-boiled heavies were created from the egg robots at the beginning of the game, and also how the Phantom Ruby apparently favors a monarchical system of government, making one of them king and all. Just a few neat little observations about the game that eventually added up to the biggest revelation I've ever had about a game before. Hello Internet, this is Mattcast, coming at you for another episode of Theory Hour, and in this episode I'm going to revise my initial timeline split theory and explain why Sonic Mania is definitively a timeline split from the main series games, and why Sonic Mania is intrinsically linked to Sonic Forces. Roll the intro. Now during my first playthrough, I thought for certain my theory was blown out of the water. I mean, all my evidence for the timeline split was essentially null and void, what with Knuckles having distinct memories of Eggman tricking him, Flying Battery returning instead of just appearing, and a whole host of other problems. But when I played the game the second time and I got to the end screen, I noticed something big, or should I say, little. Why the heck is Little Planet here? What is the point of having it here? Everything's going along as normal and all of a sudden, boom, Little Planet! Ugh, something's fishy here and I have an idea of what it could be. But first, let's back up a second and review what we know for sure. First, Forces Classic Sonic knows how to do the drop dash. Second, Forces Classic Sonic is from another dimension. Third, Sonic Mania definitely takes place after Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Fourth, the Phantom Ruby is capable of messing with time, space, and possibly dimension. And fifth, Little Planet appears in Sonic Mania. So making the obvious deductions first, Forces Classic Sonic is the same as Mania's Sonic. Even if you deny that there's a timeline split, he has to have come from after or during the events of Mania in order to know the drop dash. Now while this may seem trivial to begin with, it has major implications. To find out what these major implications are, I'm going to use my trusty reverse reasoning, which has never gotten anything having to do with this theory wrong. If Forces Classic Sonic is from another dimension, which is just colloquial speak for another timeline, then that must mean that Mania Sonic is from a different timeline than the one that Forces is in. If we say that Forces is in the main timeline, which it obviously is, then Mania must take place after a timeline split. So now that we've validated at least part of the initial theory, with actual evidence this time, it's time to move on to when and why the timeline split happened in the first place, and I've got a pretty good idea of how to answer those. Remember how I mentioned Little Planet earlier? And yeah, I know it was like 1 minute ago and you probably remember it unless you've got short-term memory loss, but I can't think of a better way to have the script flow, so bear with me. Well, that's not the only thing involving Little Planet that's in the game. It also appears in the cutscene after you finish Press Garden Act 2, right before Eggman Phantom Rubies you to Stardust Speedway Pass, on the blueprint board Eggman's plotting on. When I saw this for the second or third time, I had really started to consider the question, why the heck is Little Planet in Sonic Mania? Doesn't it only appear once a year or something? And after seeing this cutscene play out again, I finally reached a conclusive answer. Sonic Mania is an alternate timeline version of Sonic CD, which takes place after 3 and Knuckles. When I initially came up with that explanation, I immediately thought, this can't possibly be right. I mean, Sonic CD released before 3 and Knuckles. How could it take place chronologically after? But surprisingly enough, there's actually a ton of evidence in favor of this argument within Sonic Mania. For instance, on the same blueprint that Eggman drew Little Planet on, he also drew a model of Metal Sonic, implying that he hadn't built it yet. Moreover, Eggman uses the exact same plot as he did in Sonic CD, what with chaining Little Planet to turn into his home base. Also, Little Planet only appears once a year, so that means that either Sonic is a full year older in Mania than in 3 and Knuckles, which is unlikely, or CD and Mania happen concurrently in different universes. Also, the plot of Sonic CD, which is that Sonic was taking a break from his recent adventures to see Little Planet, fits surprisingly well with the plot of Mania, which is that Sonic just finished the events of 3 and Knuckles. And what really puts the metaphorical nail in the metaphorical coffin, the elevator in the trailer animation for Sonic Mania doesn't have a CD button. even though it has 1, 2, 3, and K, and CD stages appear in the game. There just seems to be too much evidence that CD takes place after 3 and Knuckles, and because Little Planet appears in the same manner in both games, I have to conclude that Mania and CD take place at the same time in different timelines. I'm not going to take the time to reply to a potential objection. The question is, if Sonic Mania takes place at the same time as Sonic CD, then why isn't Amy in Mania? And moreover, why isn't Knuckles in CD? These questions seem valid at first glance, but there's a lot of evidence that dismisses them. I'll tackle the one about Amy first. Well, first, she does appear, but only in passing. We see a lot of callbacks to classic Sonic's adventures in Mania, and the one that happens to appear in the second act boss of Metallic Madness is a small robotic Amy doll that hugs Sonic like the real Amy did in the first level of Sonic CD. Now you could try to argue that because Eggman has knowledge of Amy's obsession with Sonic, that must mean that the timeline split is impossible, since Mania must have come after CD. But there is one caveat to this. We know that the Phantom Ruby, which Eggman is well acquainted with at this point in the game, has a habit of messing with time, and more importantly, timelines. Because of this, it's not too much of a stretch to imagine that Eggman took a look into the CD timeline and saw that his plan failed, but also that Amy was annoying for Sonic. So in order to psych Sonic out, Eggman worked Amy and her cleanliness into one of his machines. And more importantly, because the last argument is a little bit weak, it wouldn't make sense for Amy to be present if this was really a timeline split. Since Eggman found the Phantom Ruby in Mania, he had absolutely no reason to follow his initial plan exactly. The part where he had Metal Sonic kidnap Amy as ransom would make absolutely no sense, since he already had such a powerful weapon. Why take a hostage when reality itself is already your hostage? Now about Knuckles not being in CD. This one is even easier to explain. The only reason that Knuckles was at all involved in Mania was because the Phantom Ruby happened to be on Angel Island. If the Phantom Ruby hadn't existed, he would have no reason to join Sonic on Little Planet, and would still be chilling out on Angel Island just like we see him doing in the beginning cutscene of Sonic Mania. Even if Sonic asked them to go, their friendship would still be a little stressed since they were very recently enemies, and so Knuckles would probably be like, "Nah fam, I'm gonna go bench press something and get swole." Oh no. So now that the Mania is an alternate CD thing is established, how does this connect to Forces? Well, that's pretty simple, but it involves spoilers, so if you haven't 100% beaten Sonic Mania yet, and want to avoid story spoilers, skip to this point in the video right now, because I'm starting my explanation in 3, 2, 1. At the very end of Sonic Mania, in the boss battle of Titanic Monarch Act 2, Sonic squares off against Eggman in his hyper-powerful mech suit, which to my knowledge is also fittingly called the Titanic Monarch. During this fight, Eggman demonstrates mastery of the Phantom Ruby's power, warping both time and space to send Sonic to fight various hard-boiled heavies he's faced throughout his journey. It's a pretty awesome boss fight, but something kept nagging me throughout it. I noticed that the screen kept on messing up whenever Sonic got warped by Eggman's Phantom Ruby hands, glitching out. And I found myself wondering, haven't I seen those glitchy effects before? Aren't those the same effects as those around Metal Sonic in the Forces screenshots that are in the video with his boss theme? So I checked, and they bear a striking similarity. I'm willing to wager that it's the same sort of power causing it. So in that case, we have definitive evidence that the Phantom Ruby literally glitches reality when it's used. Something else stood out to me when I made this connection, and that was the beginning cutscene of the game. When the Phantom Ruby is used to send the player to Green Hill, the sound it makes is awfully familiar. I did a bit of digging, and wouldn't you know, it's the same sound that Infinite uses when he summons his weird red cubes in the Sonic Forces trailer. So there's a definite connection between Infinite and the Phantom Ruby. If you beat the secret final boss of Sonic Mania in Egg Reverie Zone, you end up getting an ending where both Sonic and the Phantom Ruby are sucked into a wormhole that the Ruby opened up. This is the true ending of the game, and this means that Mania Classic Sonic is definitely the classic Sonic from Sonic Forces. We already knew this because of the drop dash, but this extra evidence is pretty good confirmation. Now here comes the point when Sega does the legwork for me. In one of the Sonic Forces prequel comics they've recently released, they showed that Eggman, modern Eggman that is, I have to clarify that now, had the Phantom Ruby and was using it to manipulate reality and send Knuckles and Silver back in time to be attacked by Chaos. This means that it is definite canon that the Phantom Ruby goes from Sonic Mania to Sonic Forces. There is literally no disputing this fact. Huh. It's kinda weird being able to say that. I'm not really used to dealing indefinites. I'm honestly a little dumbfounded right now. So what does this mean about the plot of Sonic Forces? Well, I'm going to assert right now that Infinite is powered by the Phantom Ruby, and that Eggman has been using its power to recruit and control various enemies from Sonic's past. This also means something pretty significant for the Sonic series as a whole. While I'm willing to concede that the timeline split I postulated in the first Sonic theory I made, the one that occurred at Sonic Colors, isn't in effect, though I wish it was, and the possibility isn't entirely closed, Sega could choose to pick it back up if they wanted to. I still stand by the timeline split between the standard timeline and the Drop Dash timeline, with the additional stuff from this episode added in, that being that Mania is an alternate CD. If this is the case, then that means that Sega has set themselves up to adopt an excellent new business strategy. They now have a canon reason to do whatever the heck they want to do with the classic formula of Sonic Mania without messing with the standard canon. With this new capability, they can satisfy not only fans of the modern formula, boosting with heavy emphasis on speedrunning, but also fans of the classic formula, precise platforming with tight controls. It's a win-win situation, especially if they continue to divide their development teams like they have with Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces, such that they can put out more games that do better with what they're focused on. Please keep my boy Christian Whitehead and his squad, Sega. Please do it. And that's the theory. Sonic Forces' plot is contingent on the true ending to Sonic Mania. The Drop Dash timeline began with Sonic Mania, which occurs at the same time as the events of Sonic CD in the standard timeline, and Sega has the perfect business strategy to satisfy all their fans while still keeping the Sonic canon consistent. Thank you all for watching. I had an absolute blast doing this 3-part theory, even if the first part was mostly contradicted and the third part took forever. And I hope you enjoyed it too. Sonic Mania was an excellent game, and I'm really excited for Sonic Forces. It's the sort of speedrun-centric gameplay I like. Here's hoping for another 25 years of the Blue Hedgehog, and remember, stay theory, my friends.